So you're starting to see a lot more people in the PvP area use spears now, but you don't really see them using the shorter spears, or if they are, they're using the partisan. If you've watched any of my videos or follow any of my PvP philosophies, you know that I personally think that weapons that are good at spacing and that can mix up their playstyle being defensive and offensive are generally some of the best weapons in the game. Now, that doesn't suit everyone's playstyle, and that doesn't necessarily mean that other playstyles, like being reactive or being super aggressive or doing something completely different, whatever it is you want to do, going for parries, whatever, aren't effective. I just personally think that the spacing tactic and understanding how to control the space around you and condition your opponent is very, very important. In fighting games, it is kind of the same concept, but I think it does translate well over to the Dark Souls PvP arena. One of the weapons that you never really see, and one of the weapons that I personally think are extremely good and kind of flying under the radar, not really used, not really talked about, is just the regular old winged spear. Now, why is this weapon so good, or why do I think it's so good? Several reasons. Like I outlined in kind of that intro, it can play very defensive, being a spear. As enemies approach you, you can, roll away, throw out that R1. It does have a good range on its poke. So it can be a very defensive weapon. Now, one of the downsides of it is, as you can see there, enemies that like to roll and parry, or just run at you and parry, or whatever it might be. Since it is a small weapon, it can be parried. So just in general, try to bait those out if you can with this weapon. It's not too hard. But one of the main strengths of this weapon, just like the katana, if you've watched my Chaos Blade video, is that no matter how much damage you take, even if you get parried, you can play out the rest of the match basically without getting hit. And that's what you're going to see me do. You can see that we have actually come back on this guy quite a bit, and we've more or less evened up the score. And we do have the faster weapon. He knows that he's not going to get us, or he's going to have to go for another parry, which we already foiled once earlier in the match by getting a 2-hit combo on him because he mistimed his parry. And now he's switching to the straight sword, and he's going to realize once again that this glaive is just not going to cut it, so he's going to be switching back to the great sword very, very shortly. Now, as you can see here, anytime he approaches me with that glaive, I'm going to just space him out and throw out my R1, forcing him to roll, and then I can just roll away easily after that and quickly just dodge his attacks. So he switched back to the longsword here, and when he was running at me, I knew I had Tears of Denial, so I knew that he was probably going to try to attack me if I turned my back to him and try to run away, because the running R1s generally have some nice phantom range on them, especially with the straight sword. And as a result, we fished out the trade. He didn't even activate our Tears of Denial, but we still came back by playing a little bit more defensive. Throughout that last match, we played very rushdown and defensive, if you've picked up on that. In this match, we're playing pretty much strictly defensive. This guy just wants to rush me down. He spaced out a very good R2 there. I thought he was going to continue to come at me with the R1, so I threw out my attack a little early and got punished for it, but that's okay. We clearly have the advantage on this guy, and using this weapon with under 30% weight, a very low equip load in general, allows us to equip stuff like the Flynn ring. And this weapon also counters very, very, very heavily from the Leo ring. As you can see, even without the Leo ring, the 2-hit combo is dealing about 450 to 500 points of damage. Very, very strong. There, I just decided to be a little cheeky and finish him off with some throwing knives, but we easily could have switched up any of those throwing knives into a R1 attack and caught that opponent. Now, I'm going to fast forward the rest of this fight club because essentially nobody comes to fight me. This guy finally finishes dicking around with the other guy, but he gets activated from being a mound maker, so he's going to end up going home, which, so I just decided to go home myself using the Dark Crystal. Now, this is the second fight club that we entered right after the first one, and once again, you're just going to see the dominance of the spear. So I've already talked about the defensive aspect of why it's good. Now, the offensive aspect is very easy. It's a running R1, is like a thrusting attack, just like the katana. So it is extremely powerful for that. Just like the katana was, you can space enemies out very, very easily. You can hit them with the tip of the weapon. You can kind of approach them, hit them with the pole part of the weapon. Even the hitbox on this weapon is insane. It's not the longest, but you don't need it to be because it can still outspace things like great swords at a decent range. It is very quick and very fast to recover. There you can see I threw out the attack and was able to roll away pretty much immediately after. Very easy to punish, very low consuming stamina, as you can see on my stamina bar when I use the weapon, coupled with the lower weight load, all the stamina recovering equipment. It makes this weapon one of the more ideal weapons, just like the Chaos Blade and other katanas, to rush enemies down with. Very, very, very easy to switch up your playstyle. The final thing that makes this weapon really good, just like the Chaos Blade, or even better than the Chaos Blade in some regards, is the combo damage. The standing R1 is just a standard poke outwards, which, like I mentioned, is very, very good. You can space out opponents, play defensive with it, even play offensive with it. But because it is a poke, it is easier to hit people at certain ranges rather than the Chaos Blade. Now, you're probably thinking to yourself at this point, yeah, that's all great and dandy, but why not just use a regular longer spear? You get more range, it's just as good, same moveset. Not necessarily. Upon testing, this is what I personally found. I mean, I'm sure you can look up frame data for this stuff sooner or later, but from what I personally found, the successive attacks or the successive R1 attacks from the wing spear seem to be, at least to me, just from practical testing, the fastest out of any spear. It seems faster than the Partisan. The hitbox on it does seem a little bit better too. I don't know why, but it is very good. And I find myself catching a lot more people rolling around me than I do with the Partisan when I use that. And I've used the Dragon Slayer spear, I've used the Partisan, I've used the Lothric spear, I've used the Wing spear. And in my opinion, this spear, being the smaller spear, it's faster, it does a lot of damage, it consumes very little stamina. It is really, really good. It also weighs very little, which makes it applicable for these under 30% builds, giving you the extra far roll, allow you to utilize the Flynn's ring because you only have about, I think, like 17 or 18 equip load, actual units of equipment, which gives you a lot of benefit. I think around 23 points of damage from the Flynn ring, maybe. So it is very, very good. Plus, again, like I said, you can maximize the damage by putting on stuff like the Leo ring, even having the red Tearstone ring on you if you want. You can get a lot of damage and a lot of mileage out of this spear. It's absolutely insane. Plus, you can buff it with a resin. Not really that big of a deal, but it does give you a little bit of extra attack. So you can see just how effective this spear is. I mean, we just go in and just dominate fight clubs. Being a spear, you can play reactive with it. You can play offensive. It's just, it has basically everything you want. And funny enough, you would think that something like a glaive or like a longer reaching weapon that is, it has hyper armor, it is kind of fast. I mentioned this in a greatsword video as well, like just general great swords and glaives. They're medium weapons, and they're not the fastest. They're not like small weapons like straight swords and stuff like that, but they're not the slowest like ultra weapons or really heavy weapons. So they're kind of in that middle range, and they don't really excel at anything too much, but they don't really suffer with anything all that much either. And as a result of that, because they have some hyper armor, because they do decent damage, because they have decent speed, not the fastest, not the slowest, not the most damaging, not the least damaging, but they are very good at countering rushdown. And something like the glaive that has a decent amount of range, and this is why I mentioned towards the game's earlier release why I thought the glaive was a top tier weapon, and it still is very, very good. But the glaive gets a lot of hyper armor, like glaive and the Gundir's halberd and those kind of weapons. And you would think that this weapon would suffer against it. But again, just because you don't have to contest anything, like the katana, you can run in for a poke, roll away. It makes this weapon very good and very versatile to counter a lot of play styles. It can counter Karthus swords very good, or very well. Another top tier weapon. It can even counter katanas, as you can see here. This guy with the running attacks can't even catch us, and even if he does come in for a running attack, the running R1 with his Chaos Blade, we could end up out poking him and out trading him, and he might end up doing a little bit more damage. Depends on who has the Leo ring or who's using the Flynn ring and stuff like that. But there you can see we did trade with him with the weapon art. He did, not much damage, and we did a lot more damage on our counter hit with the spear. I was about to leave this world too because nobody was coming down to fight me, but this guy ended up coming down, so I was like, sure. Now, this is kind of an example of what I was talking about. This guy using just a regular halberd, which is actually quite good because it has a one-handed spear attack. I think this is actually the red hilted. I'm not too sure. But nonetheless, this weapon is also very good. You can see there the hitbox on it is kind of phantom. I don't know if he was lagging or what, but he has some good armor, and as a result, he was able to out-trade us. So now we know we don't want to trade with this guy. His weapon does a little bit more damage than us, so we're going to have to play a little bit more aggressive, or not aggressive, sorry, a little bit more reactive towards him to not fish out trades. If we go up against smaller weapons, you can fish out trades easily with this weapon, but again, because it is one of the faster weapons, you can switch up that playstyle, play a little bit more reactive, and as a result, You can see here, just roll around the enemy, going for a poke, roll away. You see that he's spamming out his rapier or S-Dock, whatever he has in that offhand there. But it's very easy for us, again, to contest him. He's not doing a poking attack, so we can, with his rolling R1, so we can contest him there and get a trade-off on him. And here he kind of realizes that that weapon wasn't really working out to him, for him, sorry. So he switches to, I guess, an Ultra Greatsword as a Hail Mary attempt to kind of out-trade us, or not trade us, sorry, hit us before we hit him and deal a lot of combo damage. Now, the host ended up dying, and we pretty much have this guy dead, but you know, he ends up going away. But that is the video, guys. Let me know what you think. Thank you so much for watching. I really do think the Wing Spear is a very top weapon. It does take a little bit of getting used to because of the fact that it is a shorter spear. You have to know your spacing very well. But again, if you're like me and you like spacing, try out the weapon. Anyways, click that button to subscribe to the channel. I would really appreciate it. And like the video if you did enjoy my analysis. Of course, check my other videos if you enjoy the Dark Souls content. Thank you so much again, guys. Quantum is out.